Listen to.
Welcome back. It's exactly 8:44 a.m. and we're now going to be looking at the whole BRICS situation, and we're going to try and give you a breakdown focusing on South Africa's relationship with China. And to talk to us about this matter, we were meant to be talking with Professor Kin. He's not available. I should imagine it has to do with the landing of, obviously, the president of China, and that, of course, is Jinping. So I suppose the delegation is there to meet him and welcome him to South Africa. We will, however, be talking with Gideon Chitanga. He's standing by to chat with us, and undoubtedly he's also at the summit right now. Gideon, a very good morning to you. Welcome to the program.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm very well indeed. Are you in Sandton? Are you at the BRICS summit as we speak?
Everyone has to be here.
Oh, okay. So I'm the only one left behind holding the fort here, but that's okay as long as we can hook up with you guys. Gideon, just for the benefit
Yeah.
of for the benefit of our listeners this morning, you and I've talked many times in the past. Just remind our listeners who you are and what you're doing at the BRICS Summit.
My name is Gideon Chitanga. I'm a research associate at the African Center for the Study of the United States. And I hold a PhD in political science. I have research interests in geopolitics, African politics, international relations, foreign policy, African diplomacy, and issues of democracy and SDGs. And obviously, the BRICS is of interest to me. It's something that we are keen to observe, basically to understand its implications for geopolitics, as well as how Africa and South Africa can benefit from this major event.
So you are there now. Will you be present as a spectator or an audience member at the main talks of heads of state, or will you be involved in the bilateral discussions that are also happening simultaneously?
I am not directly involved in the internal processes, the formal processes that are meant for government, but I'll be part of the audience, mixing with researchers and media practitioners. Obviously, trying to get as much information as possible on to understand the processes, what's going on, and the potential outcomes.
Okay, we do know that the South African-Chinese relations go beyond economic cooperation. We also know that Chinese President Xi Jinping has already landed, so I understand. But of course, he has been, there have been meetings between him and his counterpart, Cyril Ramaphosa. As far as Xi Jinping's visit to South Africa, this is his fourth state visit to our country. He's visited in the past. And of course, I guess over the years and his past few visits has kind of strengthened the relationship, the diplomatic relationship between the two countries. And this also marks the 25th year of these relationships between the two countries. What more do you suppose is going to be happening during the BRICS summit to further strengthen the relationship, and also regarding, I guess, bilateral issues, trade, investment? We know China is heavily invested in Africa. Are we looking for more of that investment in South Africa per se? So a whole host of questions given to you. How do you see all of this playing out?
So they both President Ramaphosa and the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Naledi Pandor, have already laid down their objectives in terms of their expectations at multilateral level and the bilateral level, what they seek to get from the BRICS, but also within the context of bilateral relations between South Africa and China. And there are several layers of the engagement. At multilateral level, South Africa remains the major entry point to Africa. And in that sense, South Africa represents and articulates the needs and interests of Africa within the context of geopolitics, economics, diplomacy, and the broader continental relations with China, which we very well clearly expressed within the FOCAC. So I think at that level, the key issues for discussions would be the bigger issues that are affecting the world: conflict, climate change. There's also an interest for African countries to increase the quantity of goods which they are selling or trading into China, as much as they are also importing goods from China. And those conversations are key at different levels. At multilateral level, at a global scale, it's exploring the issue of peace. I think the conflict in Ukraine and its various dimensions will be major issues for the two leaders to brainstorm, exchange notes, catch up on the processes that have been happening, directly talk about the Africa delegation which went to Kyiv and Moscow. Obviously, there has been communication going on, but I guess when the two leaders sit, they would like to at least directly catch up and exchange notes on that. We understand that President Putin will attend the BRICS meeting via online means, he will not be physically present. And I think that will also be part of the conversation President Ramaphosa will probably use. The official availability of President being in South Africa to just update him on these things. At bilateral level, South Africa will, I think, explore deepening economic relations and political ties with specific focus of South African interests. And at continental level, South Africa will be rolling out or laying out the broader continental agenda. And by the way, we hear that President Xi will, on the sidelines of the BRICS summit, seek to meet with African leaders using this opportunity.
Okay, let's look at the issue around both South Africa and China through the BRICS platform have consistently called for the reform of global governance institutions such as the United Nations Security Council, the International Monetary Fund, and the World Trade Organization. Both countries have committed to enhancing and intensifying South-South cooperation for the benefit of developing countries. Do you think they're going to take those talks even further?
Very important, and critically because Africa is seek to be represented in all the institutions that you have mentioned, including the G20. And the whole conversation is about the continent seeking equal representation and participation. More so because at the critical structures where key policies and decisions are made, even at the present moment, Africa is not represented. And there's a sense in which African leaders feel that decisions are made for them and dictated for them without a sense of understanding their conditions, needs, and interests. I also think that China will be very much interested in clarifying its position beyond just saying they broadly support Africa in these issues, probably becoming very specific, certainly because at the U.S. Africa Leaders Summit in 2022, the U.S. shifted a bit its rhetoric and started to talk a language of viewing Africa as an equal partner, respecting African leaders, listening to them, including supporting the representation of Africa at the G20. I think also within the increasing the African representation within the UN Security Council. So China is a major ally of the continent. I think he would want to be seen to be ahead of any other potential global player in standing with Africa and playing a key role in supporting African interests.
Okay, finally, then let's look at the important global issues. And I'm kind of wondering how the US would view this, because undoubtedly there are going to be repercussions. There's been talks about a BRICS currency as well, but we'll talk about that another time because that's pretty deep rooted and lots of it's very complex, but we leave it for another time. But one of the things I do want a quick short answer to is obviously the United States and the West have blamed China for the global pandemic. That's the COVID-19 pandemic. And of course, we do know that South Africa refused to blame China as, you know, the West had criticized them, but also that both countries were criticized for the hoarding of vaccines by Western countries. Rather, China and South Africa criticized the West for the hoarding of Western countries. Is that done and dusted? Is that something that they're not even going to bring up because it's over, it's behind us? Or do you think it's still a bone of contention as far as the West is concerned?
It's an ongoing issue, and I am not just sure whether it's going to be a key agenda item, but we know that South Africa, African countries, together with the help of China, has been trying to engage the West on with the specific case of COVID. It was mainly African countries seeking to produce their own medications to use for the African population, and these Western companies which hold rights to these medications were tried. So it was first hoarding of the medications and controlling their rights on the particular different varieties of medications that were needed to deal with an emergency. A process and an approach which obviously affected other countries from producing COVID medicines. And there is an ongoing conversation to say that this issue of hoarding and hoarding medicines, controlling rights, criticizing other countries as sources of pandemics or diseases is actually a major problem. African countries want to be able to produce various medical needs or medications for COVID, for Ebola, for other pandemic situations, but they can't because the intellectual rights of the different various medicines that are available are held by Western medical research institutions and companies. And I understand that in principle, and directly China has supported Africa in independently producing its own medicines and getting into researching, further doing research on pandemics, which is key. The third layer of pushing this process further to production, I think it's going to be a long political process with and against the big farm which holds the rights. But it's a key conversation, I think, that is ongoing. We don't know when the next pandemic will happen, but the biggest lesson from COVID was that Africa must always be prepared on its own and by itself so that the African citizens can access the necessary medical resources they need.
Gideon Chitanga, really a pleasure always talking with you. Research Associate at the African Center for the Study of the United States at the University of Wits. And really, you've given us some key insights into the discussions that are going to be had at BRICS. You go well. Thank you once again for always being available to talk with us here on Salam Media. God bless.
Thank you.
8:59, standing by with the news on the top of the hour is our news correspondent, Zai Jadwit.